that Sunday, which I have very little recollection, my parents and my husband and my daughter were there. They were going to go get something to eat because we're all kind of looking at each other. You know, I'm just in ICU. They're getting me all prepared. And I'm thinking, no, I just need a few days. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And they went to eat something. And when they came back, I was out. They, had to put me into an induced coma. And I was, on life support because the lungs failed as well.
What is up, everyone? I am Lachlan Samuel, and this is the Open Up Podcast, the show where real people open up and share real stories of struggle. What's up, fam? Before we get into this episode, I just want to say that this story is hella inspirational. I am so grateful that I got the opportunity to not only sit down and interview Dr. Pamela Dunn, but that I also got to chat with her afterward, and now I get to keep in contact with her because I genuinely believe deep down in my plums that she is meant to share this story. This is just so empowering, inspiring, and so powerful that there's no way you're going to listen to this interview, listen to her story, and not be inspired. God damn it, man. This is so powerful. She talks about her struggle with GBS, or Guillian Barré Syndrome, however you want to pronounce it. But she talks about waking up from a coma with paralysis and then using her mind to overcome it. But I'll let her get down to the nuts and bolts of her story, plus some other things she's had to deal with throughout her lifetime. I am just really excited for you guys to hear this, because listening back to it, I was over the moon, I was stoked, and I'm stoked for you guys. Whew. Take some nuggets of gold out of this, guys, and let it spur you on, let it spur you to take action and to overcome your struggles using the power of your goddamn mind. So stoked. Thank you for tuning in, guys. And without further ado, let's get into this episode with Dr. Pamela Dunn. Ciao, ciao. Okay, good to go?
Yep.
Welcome back to the Open Up Podcast, everybody. Special guest this week in episode 33 with Dr. Pamela Dunn, the author of the book Survived 1 Millimeter at a Time, where she details her struggle and the way she overcome Guillian Barré Syndrome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting me come to your house to do this.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Okie dokie. Usually jump straight into childhood.
Mm-hmm.
You can give us a quick summary of everything you've been through. Sounds like you've been through a lot.
Well, as a child, I was quite ill with ear infections, throat infections, and allergies, and typical things they say are childhood things. And I went through the traditional Western medicine route, and nothing gave me any relief. And my mother finally listened to a friend after over a year, persuading her to take me to a chiropractor. And as young child, I'll never forget it. It was like it happened yesterday. I had an adjustment, and everything was better. And it was so phenomenal that the ear infections, I was set to have grommets. I was set to have my tonsils taken out. And I was supposedly allergic to all of these things. And there was just actually misalignments in my spine. And it doesn't work for everyone like that, but it did for me. And as a young child, I decided at the young age of 9 years old that I was going to be a chiropractor.
That would have seemed like magic at that age, wouldn't it?
That's right. And I just thought my chiropractor was, like a god. And so most children that don't know what they want to do when they grow up, well, I was one of those that did. And totally focused on helping others the way it helped me. And so with all that pain and suffering as a child, that started my values of health and wellness, at such a young age. So otherwise, my childhood was like any standard American child, really, in the growing up in the Midwest. of
What's that
Michigan.
like? I have no idea.
True, but if there's any American listeners, they'll understand. But in fact, we played outside and did all those things, but it gave me a new, and I was just very interested in alternative things. So very into my health. And then as a teenager, instead of ordering pepperoni pizzas, I was ordering pizza with broccoli, and I was one of those weirdos.
Pizza.
broccoli and capsicum and vegetables, basically. Yeah. So
Wow, that's powerful. So you've really taken that ideal and that moment where you found a release or found relief, and that's really spurred you on to go where you've come to at this point.
yes, I mean that was always very, very strong foundation in the health and wellness, nutrition, exercise.
Okay. And so the first story we want to cover is at 33, but can you give us or walk us through what happens from childhood up until that point?
So grew up in Michigan, suburb of Detroit, and when I went to chiropractic uni in 1990, so I was 20, long story short, I met my ex-husband, and we ended up moving to Australia when I was 21 years old. So I did my studies in Melbourne, and up until then, I mean, I was anti-drugs, anti-smoking, and, into just leading a relatively healthy lifestyle for a teenager. Come to Australia and all the new culture. It was wonderful to learn all the different things, and did my chiropractic study, and then moved to Perth after I was finished, because I really love the weather in Perth and the coast and the water. And unfortunately, that marriage did not work out. We had one daughter, and so we were married about 12 years, and then went through a tragic divorce. And that was, of course, a huge stressor, as anyone that's been through a divorce, unless it's more rare to have a good divorce, otherwise you probably wouldn't have a divorce in the first place. But I would say that was a very stressful event for me back in 2003.
Yep. And looking back now, do you have a better understanding? Because I know in the moment it's hard to look at those events objectively, especially when it's relationship or the end of a relationship. But do you have a better understanding of what caused that to break down at all?
Well, so at the time, there was no one. It's always two sides.
Yep.
Technically, there's three sides. So, I'm not saying it was all him or all me. It just didn't work at the end of the day for numerous reasons. But I believe that if you leave no stone unturned, and I gave it a good 12 years, I believe I did everything I could in my power at the time and with what I knew to then realize I needed to break away from that marriage. And it sparked me, and that was another significant event, kind of like being so sick as a child.
Yeah.
Going through divorce, I kept thinking, I did everything I could. Why did this happen to me? And it sparked my personal development crusade, if you will. So I wanted to understand human behavior, the brain. Why did I do what I did? They say sometimes you can marry your father, sort of thing. And I think, well, what's in that? I didn't see that, but I wanted to understand what makes me tick more as an individual, and more about relationships and that sort of thing. So.
Wow. So in terms of mentally, how hard was that breakdown or that divorce for you? Because obviously you had the daughter, and you ultimately made the decision to leave.
Yes, I did. It was huge.
Okay.
Huge. And at that time, probably the most stressful time of my life.
Okay. And did you touch on anything like depression at all?
No, I didn't. I have a pretty strong mental attitude. I try to be positive as much as possible, but I'm also a realist.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, enough. If you're too positive and, this eternal optimist, that doesn't always work either.
No,
so
it's a healthy mix.
That's right. So the realism hat comes on, and then I did the best I could mentally. So no drugs, no for depression and that sort of thing. I just have good family and friend support, and tried to get out, exercise, breathe fresh air, get in the sunshine, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And were you able to open up freely to the people close to you about that situation?
It was very, very difficult for me, actually. I'm a very, very private person. So I've come a long way.
Well,
I mean,
you seem so outgoing, so it's it's a bit weird to hear that.
But again, I've grown a lot.
Okay.
This was over 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But back then, this conversation probably wouldn't have happened because I'm just so private.
Yeah.
But that was a significant step to open that up. And it's embarrassing. It's, you feel like, how could this happen? You feel guilty. And I think at the end of the day, we're all in a similar situation in some form of tragic experience. So.
Yeah. I think especially being uncomfortable telling people close to you about something like that, something so personal, goes back to having that identity.
Yes.
As being in a relationship and being settled down.
Yes.
I guess the American dream.
Yeah, and let's be honest, I'll admit now, pride and ego too.
Yeah.
Because you think, oh, geez, I'm one of those now. Now I'm divorced, and that's not the way to look at it. But that is how I felt at first. So.
Yeah, and it's funny to think like that because no one else would care.
That's true. That's true.
Especially the people who love you.
Exactly.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about you touching on self-development, and that's where you went through this growth phase.
So that's where the divorce kicked my start on the personal development. And I did some archetype work, which I found very, very interesting.
Okay.
So we're not all the same. We're all human beings, but as you know, it's obvious we don't all look the same, but our values are different. And what makes us tick is very different. And I found that so interesting, and it all made sense. And then the more I read, the more I wanted to read and learn, and did different seminars, loads of books, and some of the most profound work I found was the work of John DeMartini, Dr. John DeMartini. He was actually a chiropractor originally, and now he's human behavior specialist. And so I did different work with him, different seminars, and I found that really made all the sense in the world to me to really put my puzzle pieces together.
That's awesome. It's cool that you went down that route of understanding archetypes, because obviously going down that path, you'd begin to see what about you didn't mesh in that relationship and how both your archetypes didn't quite align.
Exactly.
And that's a nerve-wracking thing to do, to dive into something that will unearth flaws in yourself.
Yes, and you have to take the archetypes, the light and the shadow.
Yes.
We all like the light, but we don't want to see the shadow, and that's there, and you have to embrace both and embrace them equally. And I found that really, really profound.
That's amazing.
And so it's not necessarily that people are bad people. It's more than, say, horoscopes or, zodiac sign. It's very, very detailed, and that gave me a lot of insight.
Cool. Okay. So what sort of archetype did you find yourself to be at that point?
Well, one of the big ones that did not mesh with my ex-husband was called Pallas Athena.
What's
and
that?
That's a very strong, independent woman. And she's a warrior type. And, of course, to butt heads with someone like that, we were both very strong personalities at the end of the day.
Okay.
So the archetypes that I was looking at were named from Greek gods, and he was a Zeus archetype, and they just clash like nobody's business. So it's kind of, it's very unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And unless you know the work, which of course it was a bit late, maybe someone could work through that, but
that's cool.
Again, that was one of the big ones at that time.
Yeah.
And we definitely have more than one or two. Can have, 7 or 8, and they show the values and the loathes, what you loathe about certain things. So if one person's a neat freak and the other one it doesn't matter to them, you're going to have a problem. And then you go, that's the surface stuff. But the deep stuff can really be a problem.
Yeah. It's powerful understanding
Very
that sort
powerful.
of stuff. Okay, and from those events, or from the breakdown and that divorce, what would be the lesson that you'd take away from that?
The lesson, one of the lessons would be everything happens for a reason. And maybe we're not, this is just my opinion, maybe we're not meant to be just with one person on our whole journey of life. Maybe I've learned a great deal from that relationship and from my ex-husband. So I try to see all the good things. There were loads of good things too. And that's the memories I like to take with me. But I believe that we are in relationships to share the journey, but to learn more about ourselves, because that other person becomes a mirror as well.
Yeah.
Well, we all are mirrors, but when you're in a relationship with someone, especially a love relationship, then that's really, really big.
Yeah. That's really powerful. That's beautiful, actually. Not too many people could go through something like that and see life through that lens. It's like rose-tinted glasses, but it's
Correct.
Powerful.
Yes.
And if you were taking those negative memories with you, you'd just be holding on to regret.
You just hurt yourself.
Yes.
And I learned that too, that it's like drinking poison. You know, you want to give that person that you dislike or hate the poison, but you're actually drinking it and causing yourself self-harm. So it really doesn't help you health-wise to do that, emotionally speaking and mentally. And then that turns into physical problems.
Cool. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps up that story, and we can move on to what I'm actually here to talk to you about. Is, how do you say it? Is it Guillian Barré?
Well, it's Guillian Barré
Okay.
is proper, but Australians usually say Guillian Barr.
Oh, okay.
Guillian Barré.
Yeah, I went through a lot
Guillian
of...
Barré, after the medical French people that discovered it.
I went through a lot of YouTube videos on pronunciation,
Yeah,
and none of them were the same.
exactly. So we say GBS for short.
Oh, well. Yeah,
So you don't have to say it anymore, GBS, but that's what it stands for. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I guess 10 years prior to the divorce, you start showing symptoms of this, or...
10 years after the divorce,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yep. So, because the divorce was 2003, funnily enough, I didn't think of it until we're talking about it, the 10 years. And 2013 was, what happened was I was working as a chiropractor, very busy, and I quote successful practice, and maybe too busy for my own good, but that's okay. I was helping people, so thinking I was doing well and trying to manage everything. And I like to coin the term superwoman. You know, I thought I was superwoman because I was, I'm remarried. So I have a husband, daughter, parents. My parents live here. My only brother lives here in Australia as well. Lots of great friends, and had a great practice. I love what I did, love my patients, and so everything was wonderful. I could manage everything. I was like an octopus, no worries. And I prided myself on being very healthy and well. I didn't have colds or flus, and honest to God, I never took a sick day in my almost 20 years of working.
That's amazing.
Did not take a sick day. And I was a type, I did break a toe once, a freak accident, but nope, didn't stop me. I'd go to work, see patients, and no, I'm okay. I got another foot. That sort of person, that sort of mentality. So I was working normal, if you will, for me. That was normal. I look back now and I go, maybe it wasn't. But I start feeling like I was getting a flu. I had just come back from Sydney on the weekend. I was there for, say, 4 or 5 days, seminar. And I came back. It was July, end of July, so it was winter here in Australia. Cold and flu season, but I'm okay. Come back, bit tired, feel like I was getting a cold or a flu. All right, blame it on the jet lag. I'll be fine. Just have some soup, which I normally would, and I'd be okay. Take a few-hour nap, get onto it. I did that, and I didn't feel any better. It was very, very unnatural for me. So I go back, and This was on a Wednesday, and my receptionist at the time said, you don't look right. And I'm like, no, I'm okay. And I didn't feel that great. So I just went home, took a bath, and went to bed. And Thursday morning, I did not feel well at all. And Thursday was my normal day off.
Okay.
But that's day off as in seeing patients. But I did loads of things on that day. And I made every minute count, right? So I'd do this, do that, manage a coffee in between my friends, let's do that. But you only got an hour, and then I'm on to the next thing, moving right along. And I canceled everything that day. Very unusual again, but I thought, boy, I just feel so exhausted, so weak. I'm just going to really lay down and sleep, and I'll be fine on Friday. And I wasn't. I wasn't any better on Friday. But again, pushing, I'll be okay. And I thought, no, I'm taking that day off. My receptionist says, no, you're not coming in. You didn't look right. Just have the weekend and you'll be okay. I'm sure by Monday, Okay, what's one day after all this time, right? Saturday morning, I was feeling very, very weak. I could barely stand. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, I couldn't even argue. But I'm the type, I got kicking and screaming going to the doctor. And I couldn't even kick and scream. I was pretty exhausted. And long story short, my mother and my husband took me to emergency upon our family GP's request, that's not her, get her to emergency, something's not right.
Yeah.
And I spent the day and night in emergency, and they couldn't find anything. And they actually said, and I don't blame them, but they didn't know who I was, and my personality, I should say. And they told my mother the next day, and my husband, there's nothing wrong with her. She's, exaggerating. She's just got a flu, and take her home. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just was so lethargic and weak, and, but they couldn't find anything. So, okay, whatever. I guess I'm going to take a week off at home, right? Yeah. That's fine. I won't see patients. I get up on Sunday morning. They come to get me from emergency to take me home. And I didn't feel like I had to go to the bathroom. And I stand up, and I weed absolutely everywhere, just uncontrollably. And I didn't even feel like I had to go. So that's a big red flag.
Yeah.
Big. And I knew, oh, my God, something is really
scary
not
for
right
someone
here.
Who's usually in good shape.
That's
good
right.
Health.
And so then my chiropractic brain goes, red flag, big trouble here. And then everybody comes running. And again, yeah, it was embarrassing, but I was over that. I didn't even, was way over that. And everybody comes running. They all go, something's not right here. I get back, and all the neurologists, all the doctors come, what about this, what about that, and then get some serious attention. Did all sorts of different tests, mainly neurological tests, because, again, differential diagnosis time. And I was so, at the time, it was like I wasn't in my body. I was I didn't know what to think. I was kind of scared, didn't know what was happening. And yet I knew it wasn't, I knew I wasn't exaggerating. I didn't know that's what they said either. So that was kind of good. No, I knew this later. I didn't know that at the time.
Would that have made you strappy?
Yeah, that's right. Because I just don't do that. But the neurologists were there. They did all these different tests. And over time, my legs were completely losing function. And they kept testing the reflexes, wiggle your toes. I could do it. I'm sitting there. But from the waist down, it was getting worse and worse. Okay. And again, in emergency, anybody could relate to how long of a process that can be.
Yes.
Especially if you're not bleeding, profusely outside.
If they can't see it.
If they can't see it, that's exactly right. So I was sitting in emergency most of that day. And a young neurologist comes eventually after their tests, and I have a very vague memory because I was a bit, out of it at the time. And they said, you want the good news or the bad news? And I'm like, oh, God, give me the bad news first, please. Good news, really? I hope there's good news, but I'd rather have the bad first because then I can prepare myself mentally. And he says, well, there's a condition called Guillian Barré Syndrome, and I knew what it was. He says, that's the bad news. And I just went, oh my God, no, in my mind, like, no, 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 no. And he says, but the good news is you will get better. Just, you will get better. And I'm like, he goes, but you will get a lot worse before you get better. And they're there to monitor me, how much and that sort of thing. So straight into ICU. I'm still conscious. And going through my mind, you can only imagine, a million miles an hour
Yes.
in the mind while the body is completely, slowing down. And I just thought, well, okay, I'm not going to need, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And they says, well, we might have to put a tube down your throat and give you life support because GBS affects everyone differently. Some people, it stops at the waist.
Yeah.
And then they can rehab the legs. Some people, it comes up further, and the very worst case is you need to be on life support, the very severe case. And the actual more severe is you can die. So that's the worst case scenario. Some people don't get a chance to recover, or you go like to the bottom of the ocean, kind of like the Titanic. I love that, where you go all the way down, and then if you can see that light, you can slowly come up if you're willing to do the work, and it's meant for you to get better. So I ended up needing the tracheotomy, but I was profusely arguing with them. No, I won't need it. I'll be fine. And they're like, okay. And then, of course, that Sunday, which I have very little recollection, my parents and my husband and my daughter were there. They were going to go get something to eat because we're all kind of looking at each other. I'm just in ICU. They're getting me all prepared. And I'm thinking, no, I just need a few days. I'll be okay. And they went to eat something. And when they came back, I was out. They, had to put me into an induced coma. And I was, on life support because the lungs failed as well.
Wow.
So it did spread very, very quickly. And then I woke up about a week later on the life support with the tracheotomy.
Man, that's
yeah.
Not only is that scary for you, that's scary for your family.
Oh, for
too.
everyone. And my poor daughter was only in year 11. And I mean, it's hard. It was absolutely horrific for everyone.
Yeah.
But I felt the worst about her because of this poor young girl, thinking, what about my mom?
So throughout that period where your body's starting to slow down and sort of lose its function, it sounds like you were super optimistic about pulling through. Were there ever any moments of like internal crisis?
When I was in the coma, I didn't know I was in a coma when I was in the coma until I woke up, which is really bizarre.
That's scary.
Kind of scary, but then in it, I see it as such a gift.
Yeah.
Looking back, because I got so much insight and revelations about life. And when I was...
Feel free to tell us about those.
When I was... one of the things that happened, I was in like a black box. And I didn't know if I was dead or alive. Was I going on to the next place? And I had a conversation with God. I said, is this it? Really? 43? I'm only 43. I have so much more life to live. What on earth, really? Totally by surprise. And I thought, if this is time, then I just hope and pray that my family and friends, anyone close to me and in my circle, if you will, anyone connected to me knows that I love them and appreciate them. Because there was no goodbyes. It was just like this. It happened so quickly. And if I'm not dead and I have the opportunity to wake up from this, I know I got a lot of work to do. So that was conversation. There was a lot of other things that happened that I felt gave me revelation. And I actually, and I'm happy to share because that's what we're doing, is sharing here.
Yeah.
And one of the profound things that I had was my current husband, Mark, meaning, not my ex, but my husband now, Mark. I never met his mother. And she was there as alive as as you and me talking.
Wow.
And she kept telling me it'd be okay. and her sisters that were deceased were there and gave me comfort. While I was in the coma, like I said, I didn't know, but it was so realistic that it was just very, very beautiful, and I'll never, ever forget it.
Wow. So throughout that coma, and you're saying you're having these visualizations, were you still in ICU at that point?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, definitely.
Wow.
So they were just keeping my vitals going, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was in a coma about a week.
A week.
Mm-hmm.
A week long.
And I did a lot of traveling in my mind.
Yeah.
So, like, you know how you have bucket lists on going to different places. I went to lots of different countries. It was great. I could fly and everything.
It's a cheap way to do it.
I know. So some place I go, I've been there, even though I haven't, but I have. So it's pretty amazing.
That's really cool. So what happens a week later when you finally wake up?
Well, that was the tough part. So I have all this fabulous traveling and insight, and it was actually a gift, like I said, looking back. And then reality came in, and when I woke, I was in more pain than you could ever imagine. And that's another thing, that I have a very high pain threshold.
Yeah.
And this was more than I've ever experienced in my life, and hope I never ever have to again, of course. And I had my child naturally, so no drugs, no nothing, and I would have 12 babies in a row, no problem, compared to this. The entire body, what happens in GBS is the myelin sheaths of the nerves, which is the protective coating, is stripped away. So it's kind of like live wires, so the nerves are not protected. And so you feel the pain, but you can't move.
So it's like when your teeth lose their enamel, how sore that is.
Yes.
But on the nerves.
Right, and your whole body. So from the neck down, I'm completely paralyzed. So like a quadriplegic. And I could not speak either. So it affected, no. So no communicating and no moving, not even turning my head. All I could do was blink. So think and blink was that effect of the GBS on me.
So from being this person who'd gone through childhood and found her remedy in chiropractic and then dedicated her life to health and wellness, now that's all been stripped from you and you're like rendered immobile.
That's right. That's correct.
That is scary.
That was
hell.
a bit scary, and completely 100% helpless
Yeah.
and dependent. And for an independent person like myself, that was the true test. And I turned that to, I knew, oh my goodness, this is going to take everything I have to get through.
Yeah.
Everything in me that I can call on and muster up.
So was there ever any moments of, oh shit, this is my life now? Or did you keep that resilience?
Because that wonderful neurologist kept saying, you're going to get better, you're going to get better. GBS can give you that opportunity of those nerves coming back very, very slowly, albeit 1 millimeter at a time. Hence the subtitle of my book.
That's so
because
cool.
It's literally that slow and that tiny.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my goodness. And the irony as a chiropractor, to me, the nervous system was everything.
Yeah.
And that's what failed me, So the perfect balance, really. Whilst I valued it so much, how much more am I going to value it again?
Yeah.
See?
So that was the work you had to do when you were
right.
speaking to God.
That's right. Yeah.
Super cool. Give me goosebumps. Cool. And so what really helped you through or helped you maintain that resilience or that positive attitude was that neurologist instilling that belief in you?
Well, it helped rather than being negative. I mean,
Yes.
you can have very negative, and this is another thing. I think to help people, you can look at it as, why me? Why me? Oh my God, I can't believe this. I was a chiropractor. How could my nervous system? I could have took that approach. And sometimes if we go into victim mode or anger mode, and even if you're there for a little bit, you got to get yourself out, because then you're going to stay stuck.
Yep.
And so the team of doctors, most nurses, were absolutely wonderful. And I believe energy attracts other energy too.
Yes.
So if you're emitting negative energy, that's what you're going to get back. But if you're emitting positive energy and having a positive belief, then you're going to get that back too.
Yeah.
So I believe, sometimes I think they were like guardian angels, really, the doctors, because they could have thought, oh yeah, whatever, just another case of GBS, whatever. But I think communication with the eyes are the window to the soul, and that's all I could really use, and that was very powerful too.
That's really
so. Yeah, it was very powerful.
Wow. That's awesome. Now, the neurologists and the doctors obviously helped you. They were your guardian angels. How was it with your family? Because I can understand for them it'd be scary seeing you like that, but they probably wouldn't want to make you feel as though you're going to be that way
Correct.
forever.
So my family, now I'm going to get emotional.
That's all right.
Whole body's going into goosebumps. We're so superhuman in that aspect. I couldn't ask for any more love and support, and I didn't even have to ask. And that's when you really know that all that matters in life is love. And if you have that, nothing else really does matter. Because I could have been there if I was on there when someone's on their own and not having the support. Sure, but the doctors and nurses, they didn't technically do anything special. They were looking after my vital needs.
Yeah.
But I believe they did do that extra special because that's how I am. That's how I believe. And my family, my mom and dad, and I know my mom kept saying, I wish I could take this away from you, as a mother does that to the daughter. And then I myself as a mother to my daughter, I wish I didn't have to see her, the pain in her eyes, suffer, seeing me suffer. And my husband was the most amazing. I call him Superman because of how much he cared for me. Not just in the hospital, but then in the rehab side of things, which is a whole nother, that's later. But my mom and dad, the pain that they would have to deal with seeing a child in pain, and that, again, many people can relate to that. It's just horrific. But we all stuck together, and they came. It was a terrible winter from what I understand. When I was in ICU, I was in four walls. I didn't know if it was day or night, summer, winter, hurricane, tsunami. I didn't know anything because I was in this room that there was no windows to the outside world. But they said it was always really rainy and really bad that year. And they'd come every day, every day to see me at some point. And that I was in there 2 months. And that was a long time for them to come all the time.
And how long was it before you sort of got any function back in your body?
My little pinky, I started feeling, and then I could move my hand, teeny bit. Probably a good 7 weeks.
7 weeks?
Yeah. So I couldn't do a thing for that long. And I had to be turned every 2 hours. They have system in the hospital. Then you have to sit, which was horrific because you can't sit yourself. The muscles are just completely lost.
Okay.
And then you realize how, like, I know that. My brain knows it, but to feel it is such a different thing.
Are they stiff or relaxed?
They're like wasting.
Okay.
Wasting. So it's like having, when people have a stroke.
Yeah.
And all that kind of waste. Well, I was like, dare I say, a double stroke. But even more so. I mean, it was complete paralysis. And then slowly I got a little bit of feeling in my fingertip. And then it would slowly come. And then I had to learn how to breathe again. So lots and lots of respiratory physio work.
Okay. And what was that feeling like when you started to feel in your pinky? Was that like
it was
hope?
Heaven. It was like, oh my God, there's hope. There's hope, which I always knew there was hope, but I'm like, is today the day? And then a day would go by. No. Okay. And then the next day, maybe because you try. It's so weird. It's like, being buried alive, and you just try to move and you couldn't until finally, you get that little flicker, and it was like, oh, yes, this is going to, and every day I'd hope for that little bit more, and it would be then maybe a little more millimeter, and a bit more, and then when it was time to do the rehab, it was like, yeah, bring it on, let's do this.
It's amazing.
I just wanted to get better.
Yeah, there's not too many people who could hold that sort of mindset or that view on what they're going through. Most people would I guess, be in that victim mode, like you said.
Unfortunately, yes,
yeah.
but we do have choices.
Yeah.
It really boils down to that. It is about your own choice.
How do you, is that something that's innately in you? Were you taught it growing up, or is that something you learned along the way?
I'd say a lot of it is innate, just my personality. And the more I learn, rather than being, like I said, super positive all the time and expecting no negative, what I've learned over time, rather than is balance. So, okay, rather than getting upset that my whole hand didn't work, I was thrilled that the pinky worked first, and then and being grateful,
Yeah.
having the gratitude for the small miracles, and little by little, each small miracle becomes more and more. So
That's awesome. That's having your eye on the process or mind on the process rather than the prize
correct,
of moving again.
correct, because no one's guaranteed tomorrow anyway.
Yeah.
And I was just grateful that I could see my family again. That I didn't die. I mean, I was grateful to be alive, even though it was horrific in the beginning. I mean, the ICU process is awful because of the pain and all that, and then you manage. But if anyone goes through this, I mean, the family support is more than the patient can actually express until they can talk.
I guess from here you can run us through like your physical recovery and anything you do mentally as well.
The mental where I was in ICU for 8 weeks, as I said. Now, when I went into ICU, I mentioned a severe case.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying this because the power of the mind is so powerful.
Yes.
They told my family, this was August 2013, expect for Pam to be in through Christmas and into the next year in ICU. Whew. And my husband knows my personality. And he was like, I don't think so. If she gets any spark of electricity, that is gonna, we'll be out of here as soon as we can. Because again, you have to have that mindset to do the work too. Because it doesn't just come back and you bounce back. All the muscles are wasted. You have to work them. So I was out of ICU at the end of September. Then I went into rehab at Shenton Park, which is no longer there. And I was an inpatient. Couldn't walk, but I could talk and I could breathe on my own, but I couldn't walk yet. So I was in a wheelchair. I didn't have full functioning of my hands at all. I still needed assistance in like a hoist to go to, get up, go to the bath. Everything was just super, super, super slow. So talk about slowing me down for someone who was used to such a fast-paced lifestyle.
And you'd have to surrender the ego, very much so, being so dependent.
100%, which I was able to, you got to do that early. Otherwise, that'll really keep you stuck.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's even harder with your significant other as well, especially since you're gung-ho independent anyway.
Yes. So, but that was a great balancing act.
Yeah.
And so and he would agree that I was a very patient because I thought, wow, I'm used to taking care of patients. Yeah. The role is completely reversed, and I'm okay. So the rehab was very, very quick, as in they expected me to be in Shenton Park for 6 weeks. I was out in 3 because that was my full-time job. I was just doing whatever needed to be done. And I had brilliant physios, commend the team there, absolutely wonderful. And I had a very close friend, Stacy, who was by my side. She's like a personal trainer on the side, so she was perfect friend to help me in that, kind of like my cheer squad, and help me in that. And tag team Mark, too, with bringing me nutritious food into Shenton Park as well, and because they knew I liked certain things, and that was very important as far as recovery as well. So lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, not processed foods and white bread toast and that sort of thing. I think they knew what I wanted, and again, the value's very important, that you got people by your side, so that know, and I'm very, very grateful for them.
Okay. And was there anything else you utilized up until that point, apart from the physiotherapy and then the support of your family?
Occupational therapy for the finer motor movements, the finer tuning. Just taking the hand and learning to flip a page in the newspaper was a huge feat.
Wow.
I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, I couldn't believe it myself. It's like literally that took, say, a week to learn because the shoulders were frozen coming out. So then you're working with, learning how to walk, dealing with 2 frozen shoulders. My hands were stuck like kind of like in a claw position, so I had to continually work them. And they have all that sort of therapy that I did. I had to learn how to write again. The brain knew what to do, of course, but the motor movement had to be relearned. Learn how to type, learn how to play the piano, again, which was something that I promised myself I would never take for granted again, and all those sorts of things. Then I had my chiropractic care. I had regular massage therapy, acupuncture, Chinese herbs, supplements that were important like magnesium because the muscles were so wasted and coming back, juices, smoothies, all sorts of great nutrition, and of course the sunshine, extremely important.
Yeah.
And not in the middle of the day where you're getting burnt, but the right hours of the day.
Yeah.
Sunshine is our friend. It's important. And when you don't see it for 8 weeks, my goodness.
Yes.
Very, very bad for vitamin D levels. So luckily I was rehabbing in the summertime, which was great. And water, lots of fresh water, and being in the water, of course, as well. Magnesium baths and laser therapy, biomedical laser therapy helped me a great deal, which low-level laser therapy is another term. And I knew about it, but I had not had any experience, and that helped the regeneration of nerves, muscles, I believe. Huge part in my recovery as well.
Can you give us a quick breakdown of how you think it helped your muscles?
Because it works on rejuvenating tissues and helping any types of cells, so whether it's muscle tissue or muscle cells in the tissues, nerve cells, bone cells that are in chaos, it works on specific frequencies to help those cells recover and repair on a cellular level and non-invasive. So that's what I like.
That's amazing.
Yes.
I guess you spoke a little bit about Dr. John DeMartini, but I think you said you started going through some of his courses at that point. Was that right?
So I did all the DeMartini work before this happened,
Okay.
Thank goodness. So when I was recovering and before I could do any rehab, I had a lot of time to think, as you can imagine, because I couldn't communicate. Even though my family would say, be there, we couldn't talk. And talk about frustrating, that was probably worse than being paralyzed.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't even write a word. Okay, if you can't talk, I'll write it down. Well, I couldn't write either, of course. So you're just going, okay, so. So when they weren't there, I would think myself and do a lot of work. And I thought, wow, this is a great time to put all my tools together and see, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? So rather than just saying we learn things, we actually utilize the tools. And so the work that I've done previous, I'm so grateful for, because I believed it was an opportunity to use them in dire straits, really. So the breakthrough experience was one of them, where you look at a perceived tragedy, because a tragedy, we could agree, yes, they are tragedies, but there's perception in that, because there's always benefits in tragedies.
Yes.
Hidden blessings. And so I credit knowing that to being able to see the hidden blessings in these perceived tragedies. So even with the pain, I thought you got to get above the pain, rise above that, and know that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And try to focus on something above that. And I literally would take myself out of my body, because otherwise it was just so horrific. And as much medication as I was on at the time, it just wasn't enough. It barely touched it. And so I just prayed that I could just deal with it. Every day was closer, and kept trying to focus on the light at the end of the tunnel. And every day I would just know that it would get closer and closer. So if you can work on the power of the mind any type of tool that resonates. And that resonated very, very strongly with me. Again, for my divorce issues, any type of business relationship issues I had, family issues, professional, personal, anything. It is absolutely brilliant. And that helped me so much utilize my own mental, positive mental attitude.
That is so powerful, and that's, I think it draws some parallels with, have you heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yes.
And his story? Very much so. I'm assuming he wasn't in the same level of pain you were, but going along those same lines.
Well, exactly. And funnily enough, he's a chiropractor too. So I'm going, interesting. But yes, and I his work as well, his books, but he was more so after the fact, and he's brilliant work too. Absolutely brilliant work.
Okay. And were there any other, before we wrap this story up, were there any other recovery tools that you used throughout that period?
Well, after the things that the exercises that I like to use now, because I used to, walking is very, very good. I think sometimes it's underrated, and walking in the fresh air outside is absolutely wonderful. So I do that on a regular basis. Excuse me. Swimming or water exercise, fantastic as well. So I make sure that I do things that support the body rather than stress it out.
Okay. So low impact stuff?
Low impact.
Okay.
Yep. Yoga. And now I'm doing Qigong, which is
Awesome.
a form of Tai Chi. I do Tai Chi as well. But that's something very, very new that I've done within the last 6 months.
Is that within shifting energy? Is that
yes,
sort of what
yes.
that
And it's
practice
more
is?
like moving meditation is probably a good way to, so rather than not just sitting, but I mean, and that meditation's great, do that as well. But moving meditation in a park when you have the beautiful trees, able to ground yourself outside, fresh air, and quiet the mind, move the body, and restore energy is fabulous.
And considering that most of our life is movement based, it's pretty powerful to have that movement meditation.
Yes. And a lot of people sit now too much too. So you
Yes.
want to get up and move the energy. Yeah.
Okay, there's one question I want to ask you about all that, and that's about you and Mark. Do you feel like your archetypes align? It sounds like they do.
Well, they align, and the funny part too is they align, and we did that work together. See, so
That's
another
awesome.
thing that we have in common is that we both wanted to better ourselves individually and realize that just coming together, everybody, the honeymoon period there's a lot to be said for that, and that does not last if you're not putting work into it.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be work as a bad thing, but both people have to continually better themselves individually to be then better in a relationship. If you're not working on self, you're not really good in a relationship in the long term. That's my opinion.
Yes.
Okay. And that is where I think we fell down in my first marriage. If we had that, maybe things would have been different. But I also believe that you got to recognize when that journey is finished. And Mark and I are actually open enough to say, if one of us, if there's something wrong, then communication has to be there.
Yep.
So we don't live where we don't disagree on things, there's disagree, but there's communication about it. And our archetypes, sometimes friends of ours would say, oh my goodness, on the outside, it would almost clash because see, he's the tortoise and I was the hare. But now I'm becoming more, he needs to, we have that complement, and both of us are aware of all the things that we've studied, if you will.
Yeah.
And we've done the courses together, and I think that is huge in relationships. It's one thing if one person is doing that and the other one thinks, no, I'm not really into that, or one likes to meditate, the other one doesn't. If you don't have the same values, then that's going to be even harder again.
Yes.
So the core values crucial, and working on self is crucial as well.
Cool. That's beautiful. I'm happy for you. You deserve it.
Thank you.
A few questions before we wrap up the episode in its entirety. What would you say the quality of your life is like at the moment? Because you're fully functional now?
Fully Yes, I mean on a lifestyle basis, yes, I do have some remnants of the GBS, but I've worked around that, primarily my hands and feet, and I've adapted so much, and it's been 5 years that I think I'm doing pretty darn good for where I've been.
Yes.
Amazingly well, and I'm very, very grateful. So quality of life, I feel I'm in a very good place. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
What have you added to your life or removed from it that's improved the quality of
I've
it?
removed a lot of unnecessary stress.
Okay.
Stress will always be there,
Yes.
but we can say, oh, well, like I said, I used to work a lot. Now I work part-time, and I know my body limits. And instead of pushing through and using, say, adrenaline to continue, oh, no, I can do this, it's like finding the balance that's not taking the reserve energy that's not going to serve anymore. See, it may serve when you're younger, but that's a misperception because it's not even serving when you're younger.
No.
Because then later you end up paying for it in some way. Now, this was a random autoimmune condition from some virus, medically speaking, but I take it as, a spiritual thing where it happened for a reason, and it was a wake-up call. Not religious, but spiritual. I do believe that.
It's meant to teach you a lesson to be grateful for what you had.
That's right. And do things differently.
Yeah.
So if I go back and do everything that I was, then I didn't get the lesson. And another thing the neurologist said, which sticks in my mind quite huge, he says, now, you're not immune to this, which you can get again. You know how with chicken pox, if you get them, you can't. But you can actually get this again.
Wow.
But it's more rare to get it a second time, but you can. And he goes, but you then got to really ask yourself, what didn't you get that first time? And so I thought, that sticks in my mind every single day because I really don't want to go through that again. I got my lessons. Thank you.
I guess in terms of like your mission and your purpose at the moment, it's pretty clear, but after everything you've been through, how do you see yourself helping others? Or how do you see yourself achieving that mission as well?
Well, I like to share my story. I am a humble person by nature. It's not about me. It's about, I believe we all have very similar things to go through. They just appear differently. So if I got these huge life lessons with GBS, someone else may have a cancer. Someone else may have, an abusive relationship that's got them, in more of a tragedy than my divorce, if you will, because it wasn't like that. But we all have something to learn and grow from in this life. And it's a matter of when and how we look at it. So I believe because I was fortunate enough to go through so many different things with this and recover from them, I have a different empathy for people as well and understand that there's different physical things, emotional, mental, and the bottom line is to encourage people not to get caught up in too busy or too stressed or tomorrow, because tomorrow may never come. No one is guaranteed, even when you do all the right things. You ask anybody that knew me, I was doing the right things health-wise. Exercising, eating right. Was my stress too much? Who knows? In comparison to others, I didn't think so. But we can't compare ourselves to others. We have to be accountable for ourselves and be able to sit down and be honest with self and say, where am I? Am I happy in the different areas of my life? Happy is a subjective term. I don't, really want to use that, but am I content and what can I do to change it? Because we all do have choices.
Yes.
And when we say we don't, we're lying to ourselves because everything for self lies within self. So we're responsible and accountable to self.
Yes, and I think when you're saying that you don't have a choice, you're stuck in ego.
That's correct.
You don't want to admit that you have a choice and that you're just not taking action.
That's exactly right. So no matter what it is, I really believe that.
We've spoken about your book, Survive, 1
Yes.
millimeter at a time. I think I read as well that you're writing another one. Is that right?
Well, I was going to write the next one about the actual specifics of what I did to recover. So
That's going to be powerful.
because especially people in the story can apply to anyone
Yes.
as far as the lessons, but the actual things to do may or may not be relevant. So I felt it was a standalone book. Yeah.
I think just the fact that you've primarily used your mindset to pull you through is going to be the most powerful thing about that book.
Thank you.
And that's going to resonate with anyone. It will resonate with anyone,
Right.
No matter what your trauma is.
And that's the main thing from this. This just happened to be mine, but you don't have to have GBS to get the lessons.
Yes.
Any trauma, you can apply that.
Yeah, I think it's powerful, especially that you went to a level that most people never get to, whereas like you lost function of your body, and then you use your mindset to fight your way back from that. That's inspiring, and that's going to get people to take action, which is important. So I hope you do write it, or I hope you do start speaking about that more, because that's going to be powerful. That's going to be inspiring.
Thank you.
Last question. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard where thousands of people would see it every day, like on the freeway somewhere, what would that message be?
Be true to yourself.
And what does that mean to you?
Get to know yourself, what makes you tick, why you do what you do, accept the wonderful things, and change the ones that you can.
That's super cool. And you got 7 weeks to get in touch with yourself.
Completely, it's like being in isolation in prison. What do they call it? Not isolation. My mind just went blank. But you know what I mean?
Yes.
Where you can't do anything.
Solitary.
That's it. Solitary confinement. That's what it was. Solitary confinement of my own body. So 7 weeks of a lot of thinking. Yeah.
That's powerful. I guess if people want to get in contact with you, should they go to your website?
I have my website, survived.com.au. Facebook page, Survived.
Okay.
That's the best way.
Awesome. Yep. And if people want to read your book, where would they go for that?
They can go on that website. I have audio, digital or print copy available. It's also on Amazon as well.
Okay. Is it on Audible as well?
Audible not in Australia yet.
Oh, wow.
So can't upload it yet.
Okay.
So, but you can get audio. The audio book I have narrated on my website. You can download on there.
Awesome.
So
cool.
But Audible when I can, yeah.
I'll put the link to your Facebook and the website in the show notes as well.
Okay.
To wrap up, I just want to acknowledge you, first of all, for taking the time to do this, to let me come here and do this, but for sharing your story, which I know, like I said before, will inspire people. It's going to empower people to not only open up, but to take assess their life and really ask themselves or question whether they are taking action, whether they are using their mind to propel them forward or, cause them distress.
Yes.
And you are a testament to resilience, which I think is going to be pretty powerful. And I really, really do hope that you push forward with all of this.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you very much.